Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our watch club for Marvel's Moon Knight. No, but I'm just a lad trying to do my best. You're Dr. Stephen Grant. Welcome to Watch Club. My name is Nate, and this is our Watch Club for Marvel's Moon Knight, Episode 4, titled The Tomb. If you're joining us for the first time, this is Watch Club, our weekly review series, kind of like a book club, but way better. Keep in mind, we will be going into full spoilers for this series and the MCU in general, so if you haven't watched this week's episode yet, and honestly, this week's episode yet, be sure to do so, and then come right back in a snap. Now, before we all shout bingo and wake up from the dreams we've been dreaming, let me introduce you to the other personalities joining me today. First up, he's a Marvel nut who's taller than King Tut. He's the Egyptian jackal, Justin Lawrence.
What's up, my Moonies? How are ya? How you doing tonight?
Moonies, is that what we're going with? I kind of like the idea of the Moonies, like the Goonies.
Yeah, exactly. That's at the end of every comic book. They have "What's up, Moonies?" It's like a section where people can fan right in and they talk about it. So it's kind of cool. I was thinking Moonies. Perfect sentiment.
That's where Stan Lee started his Excalibur.
I want a fan art of the Moonies. That's just a bunch of Moon Knight fans, but it's the Goonies. Like, let's make it happen. I'll be gladly to be. I can be Chunk if you want. And alongside him. Let me clear my esophagus. As he gets out of his sarcophagus, he's cooler than Khonshu. But if you make fun of his mummy, he's not afraid to haunt you. He's Kevin the Crocodile Hudson Chomp.
Well, unlike the mystery man or mystery person at the end of the episode, I'm glad you let me out of my sarcophagus. Thank you very much.
Right? I'm like, I mean, dude, you're definitely a personality I want hanging out with me as we run around an institution like that. But also, joining us for the first time on the podcast, it took way too long. He floats like a butterfly, but stings like a bee. His name's Mike with an E. He's Mike Smith from the Dumpster Talk podcast. How's it going, Mike?
That's amazing. Thank you very much. Yeah,
I was trying to think if that worked.
Here. I'm actually nervous. I'm like a little starstruck. I'm like, oh my God, it's those
oh,
voices.
Come on.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. And it was Excelsior. That's what I need to correct myself. Otherwise, I will get fan mail. So.
Oh, they're going to write in.
It'll be my email. I'll send it in. And be like, that you'll write in to correct yourself. On the guest.
Yeah. I am so stoked to discuss this episode with you, Mike, and honestly to discuss this episode in general. We've been living with this twist for an excruciating 4 weeks. One of the, obviously we're super blessed to get these episodes early. Shout out to Disney Plus for hooking us up, but still, man, we were not prepared when we hit that 4th episode for how long we had to wait. But Mike, before we kind of dive into the story, I want to know your high-level thoughts on the series as a whole leading up to this 4th episode.
Whole series as a whole, wow. I've been super looking forward to it as I'd say a half-assed comic nerd. By no means am I Darcy. But back in the day, I owned a few. I definitely was looking forward to it because it's a comic I hadn't read and knew very little about this hero. So I knew very little. I knew DID was kind of this sort of background to the character, and it was like Marvel's reverse answer to Batman was what I'd been told.
Yes.
And so I was like, let's check it out. No idea that it had such a background in like Egyptian culture and all that. I was like, and like lore and history. And I wish I paid more attention in history is about all that I could say, especially after this last episode. So like, I was just like, oh my God, I feel like I'm missing everything.
Yeah, I feel like this episode, obviously, it has a lot of Easter eggs, for Moon Knight fans of the show so far, especially in that tail end twist. But I mean, even from an Egyptian mythology standpoint, I'm pretty sure Stephen was geeking out all over the place, and I'm sure anybody who's watched read up on Egyptian lore it was doing the same thing. But yeah, man, getting into this episode. Obviously, again, we'll get to that big twist, but we're gonna kind of break things down and go through it. The nice part is this is our first week back that we actually get to speculate and talk about it as if we haven't already seen all of it, because we are now caught up, and the rest of the world is caught up, and I'm so stoked to dive in. So let's get into the episode. The story actually picks up with an upside-down spinning shot as we see Khonshu enslaved in his statue, placed among what I have to imagine are all the other imprisoned gods. And then after the Marvel fanfare, we pick up this episode right where we left off, with Layla and Steven avoiding Harrow's thugs. We see Layla using her cunning to avoid getting shot as she tosses a flare. She does the whole like Jurassic Park, T-Rex flare
that's
thing.
What I thought too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she tosses that onto the ammo on top of a truck, causing it to explode. And we get this very distraught and shocked look from Steven, just like, what, who are you? And then we, on the way to Amit's tomb, we see Steven keeping the body from Mark, and Mark is begging, for Layla's sake to have, control back. And we see Steven really falling for Layla here, and even a moment with them sharing a awkward romantic, I guess, kiss. Of course, this is followed up with a swift self-inflicted punch to the face from Mark as Steven stares longingly at Layla. So before we continue, I want to know, guys, what did we think of this sort of tender moment for Layla? And do you think that this relationship can even work going forward?
Yeah, it's tough to say, right? Because this definitely does highlight a sort of thruple, I think is the proper term.
Right.
Sort of like
a love triangle.
A love triangle. And one of them is the same person. So it's like, it does seem like she loves parts of Steven, but I guess what she wants is that strength of Mark at the same time. There's just something that she appreciates about both of them that you can see kind of happening in and out of these moments. But yeah, I'm wondering how they're going to play it up and what the happy ending is. I really think the only happy ending is that she becomes his villain. Like, I feel like that would be that's kind of what I'm into.
Interesting.
Wow, I didn't see it going that way, but I do think it's interesting that if Steven is somehow a fabrication or a creation of Mark that almost represents maybe his youthful innocence, then you can sort of see why Layla would be attracted to that. It's a part of Mark that maybe she's never seen, but is always sort of felt is in there, and so you can see why the attraction's there. But usually when you start an affair, it's not in the same
with the
body,
same person.
It's just that is very messy. Poor Mark. That'd be really hard to deal with.
I was having this conversation with my wife, and we actually realized that, like, if this is a manifestation of Mark's, Steven is all those things I think he wishes he could be for her.
Yes.
Is that kind of like what you guys get that vibe?
Totally.
The one thing that I've noticed that you guys haven't really mentioned in previous episodes, but I was wondering, is how much does Mark actually care for her if he's asking out random girls on steak dates? Or is
well, Mike, we'll get to that before. Justin, I know you've got a theory on that. I know you've got a theory on that.
One episode of a comic today, which may explain what that is, and so that could be maybe when we get into speculation, I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is where it's going. But the whole time I'm like, wait a minute, how much does he care? He asked this girl out on a steak date. Like, come on.
Totally. Yeah. I think we'll definitely get a chance to talk about maybe another personality that might have something to do with that. But I will say, as far as who I want her to end up with, I like Justin. I like your idea of her potentially not ending up with either of them. But I do love sort of the idea that like you were saying, like Steven is almost born from Mark, in the sense that Mark went into hiding, and now this is something that he created to stay connected with her in some way. I also love the awkward tension in this scene, like very obviously that sort of like dry British humor where he kisses her and she's like, "I'll go down first." His like face just so good as she's like tightening up the harness, and then his response. I love Steven's response to getting kissed. He just goes, "Thank you."
Yeah, and it's a bad kiss too. Like you can tell that
it's not even a good kiss.
You can tell it's his
such
first
an awkward
kiss, and it's her looking for a kiss that's not there. Like
exactly,
it was very well done.
I think for me it was the gentle like hand placement where he put his hands on her shoulder to like brace her and himself for what was about to happen. Yeah. It was very awkward, but I like the music too. It kind of has like this sort of fake romantic moment to it. Yes. That's just, it's hollow.
Well, in so many of these big epic movies that you get where there's a love interest, it's usually a heroic hero who just gives the damsel, if you will, the greatest kiss she's ever had. And so for it to be flipped like that is so awesome.
Mm-hmm. I also want to shout out the cinematography in this section of the episode, just at the opener here. It's cool because this is where the episode hit different for me right off the gate, where I sort of felt like, okay, this is something special. The really sort of sprawling, wide aerial shots that we were getting of the desert, and kind of just the different ways that they were capturing the episode. It just kind of, I don't know, it felt like it was on another level for me, especially near the beginning. But yeah, man, I definitely am interested to see where this throuple goes, but let's belay down into the next part of the episode. So
what's
after
belay?
A not so graceful, right? Yeah, I can't tell if you're joking or not. So after a not so graceful fall into the ruins, we see Layla. She draws the Arabic letters, which translate to her father's initials, on one of those like statues of the panthers or whatever those were, and we discover that he died following his dreams as an archaeologist. Stephen recognizes the entire structure is shaped like the Eye of Horus, the royal symbol of protection in the afterlife, and they learn that Amit's final avatar was a pharaoh. They discovered that the tomb would be discovered in the tongue on the symbol, and as they make their way deeper, they discover fresh blood and little chunks of meaty bits on a sacrificial table. After hearing some gunshots, they hear some clicking noises and witness a creature killing one of Harrow's followers and removing his organs. Trapped, Layla manages to sneak out as Stephen distracts the creature, and we see her make a run for it as he manages to squish it, which when he says, I squished it, it's just like, that's incredible. So before we move on, I want to know, like, we've got some more horror elements brought into the MCU. What did you think of these clicky blue guys?
That's echolocation, right? Everyone. That's what I felt like. You're definitely going that
100%.
Echolocation sort of vibe. In terms of the horror, I still feel like that was almost another little throw at Jurassic Park. When Steven says like hide, she did a poor job of hiding, but totally at the end of that coffin there, the horror really amps up past this, though. I feel like.
Yes.
Yeah. In the next section.
Yeah, and I think it'll connect with what I'm about to say here, but, this felt very, you called out Jurassic Park. I was thinking The Mummy, even.
Yes.
Very much in that sense of, like, again, that sort of dark horror genre aesthetic. Goes a little bit more than, I guess, running down flashing hallways is what we've kind of gotten.
Right, seen so far.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I think it gave me major Last of Us vibes, if anyone's played the game Last of Us before with the clickers. And I just... I think the freakiest moment is her getting pulled into the dark, and then you see her run out, and then it pulls her back again. Yeah. That was really, really well done, and I just thought that that whole section with her sort of fighting off the creature was really great, and I'm really digging Layla as a character in general.
Well, and the whole horror aspect of this scene is so great, just in how it differentiates itself from the earlier parts when they first get into the tomb, which that's always one of my favorite parts of these movies is that shock and awe and wonder you get. And usually it's, an archaeologist who's been working really hard, but instead we get Stephen, who he's not even an archaeologist. He's just an Egyptology geek. Yeah. And so not only he wasn't looking for this, he never thought he'd ever find himself in a place like this. So him just being in awe of the guardian lions and everything at the beginning of the scene was really, really well done. I really felt that. And then, so again, when the horror amps up, you realize he's probably quickly realizing this is why I never wanted to be somewhere like this.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think you really get that sentiment right off the bat when he falls into. He's like, if they told me a riddle, I would love it. I'd shit myself, but I would absolutely love it. Like, it would be hilarious. But back to your note, Nate, about Layla, it's kind of one of the reasons why I think they could really build out her character to kind of be an antagonist to Moon Knight. She's coming into her own sort of abilities. This actually really does showcase her sort of badass nature that she can kind of keep up. I think that this is really interesting how they're cementing it in her character, and it feels purposeful. It feels like they're really showing us this.
Her acting's getting
something.
Like up there too. Like she's been great, but this episode specifically I recognized and was like, oh my God, like she's killing it in this.
Well, speaking of killing it, I mean, even in last week's episode, her like raptor claw lunge forward, right? Speaking of Jurassic Park, right? Like lunging into that guy and just completely taking him out with the moon shaped necklace that she has. There's definitely something going on with her character beyond even I think what we're gonna get to at the end of this episode. So it'll be really interesting to see where they go with her. But let's keep going here. We then see Layla manage to kill off the creature. And just as she lets out a scream of frustration, she's discovered by Arthur Harrow. Now, the episode here splits up for a moment back to Steven and then back to Layla. So we're just going to stay with Layla, and then we'll get back to Steven in a moment. So back with Layla, we see Arthur he's like weaving his way into her mind as he brings up the story of Layla's father, Abdullah Al-Fauli, calling her my little scarab, which is what her dad would call her. And you can tell he's really tugging at her heartstrings, reminding her here that, her dad would be so proud of her. And he reveals to her that her father was murdered by mercenaries and that Mark was there. And he almost sort of tricks her into thinking or believing in this moment that Mark might have killed her dad. So let's talk about this interaction with Arthur and Layla. Even from across a chasm, we just see how Arthur proves to be so incredibly deadly and calculated. What did you think of this, moment between Ethan Hawke and May Calamway in this scene?
You're absolutely right, Nate. I think Ethan Hawke is owning this role and bringing such depth to what I think is a character that does kind of provide expository information at times. What he's doing in this instance is he is providing that background information that we already kind of knew. The episodes have been alluding to it. I feel like this was not a huge surprise. It was just a real good confirmation to help set up, I think, the upcoming tension. But yeah, like I do think that Ethan Hawke's portrayal in this moment feels more about him, as you said, like weaving himself into Layla's mind and kind of like trying to get under her skin, if you will, from across the way. And he's doing it with his words. It's quite an intense moment, but also simple at the same time, if you think about it.
I was going to say, you haven't seen a villain like that in the MCU that really like is using their mind. But I think technically it's the same tactic as Kilgrave was doing in first season of, Kristen Ritter's show. Jessica Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Which now, I don't know if that is MCU. Some people are saying it is. Some people are saying it's not.
We'll have to wait and see.
But it's not the same performance by any means, but like very similar tactics. And that's one of my favorite villain portrayals. Like, I just love a really smart villain. Doesn't have to like go around breaking things and smacking stuff without, to be like, I'm a villain. It's very subdued and methodical.
Yep.
Totally.
Methodical. Yeah. That's a good word.
Yeah, it shows how, he's manipulative, and I just love how he's so unnerving, even though he's kind of comforting at the same time. Like, it's this really strange back and forth that you would have with him. He's kind of just like a snake luring in his prey, and you almost have to wonder if this might be sort of a little bit of a foreshadowing sequence. Obviously, we'll get to the big thing, but what other sequence would you see someone quietly, calmly sitting across from someone talking to them, might kind of allude to the idea that this is happening, maybe not here specifically, but maybe somewhere else. I don't know. I just, after getting to the end of the episode and then looking back at that scene and rewatching it, I was like, ooh, maybe this is in his office?
That or he's just a real prick. I mean, the way he's sitting there basically with his legs crossed. Oh, that was lovely how you did that, as she basically fought off an undead being and barely scraped by to survive. He's just a prick.
And the things he tells, are they real? Like when Justin was saying, he's giving this expository information, like you hear it and you go, oh, he's telling this story of what previously happened, but you don't know whether to believe him or not. So it's kind of back and forth.
Absolutely. That's yet to be seen. I think we will see those events actually take place at some point.
I hope so.
In these next 2 episodes. But I think also too, there's been a lot of talk about Layla's father being Abdul Faul, who would be the Scarlet Scarab that has been featured, having Egyptian lore in the Marvel comics. And this sort of take on the character is much different from the comics. And is it possible that Layla could potentially take up that mantle? This is kind of where that presents itself as being interesting, given what they've revealed here about who her father was.
I mean, her father must have had obviously a huge impact on the archaeology world, but then also on, because in the previous few episodes, I think whether it be a positive impact or a negative impact, because I remember there was a moment where Layla had said something like, oh, my name, people around here don't like my name or whatever. So clearly, something that maybe her father did. But I feel like, he's for Harrow to get so under her skin by bringing up her father, obviously it meant a lot to her as well. But it was even the moment where he's like, wake up, and he's just yelling at her, you can tell that no matter what we're looking at here, Layla as a character has a lot of stuff going on that she needs to sort out. So let's keep moving on here. We get back to Stephen, and we see him using his vast knowledge of Egyptian history, freaking out as he discovers a sarcophagus containing Amit's last avatar. Get this, Alexander the Great. And after some reconciliation with Mark, he digs deep into Mr. Great's gullet and finds the Ushabti containing Amit. But with very little time to celebrate, he's confronted by a very upset Layla who screams at Mark, forcing him back into the body where he begs her to leave. She accuses him of killing her father, and he assures her that while he didn't kill him, he was there that day. Layla, mortified by this, comes to the realization that the man she married only met her because of the death of her father at the hands of Mark's greedy expedition partner. Crazy. So we get the reveal that Mark, in a way, was responsible for the death of Layla's father. Digging into that backstory, that could be why not only Mark met Layla, but also how maybe he even created Stephen. In a sense, like I feel like his guilt, he had to share it with somebody, and he couldn't share it with Layla, and he had no one else. So while he's on the run, maybe that's where Stephen sort of came from, and then and kind of became his own thing. But what do we think that it's possible that Mark's partner here might not be the one that actually killed her father, but could it have been? And Justin, I'll cue it up for you. Another personality.
No, I don't think it was. I think
okay.
I think very much like the Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood comic run from 2016 that Nate and I we both talked about it on previous podcasts that we've been reading. I think this is going to play out very much like that story, but in a different order. And I think we will see how Mark and Khonshu came to be at some point in a flashback, and we'll find out, as Mike was saying, what story is true, what parts of the story are true, and what parts maybe are not true. After just reading this latest series, I'm like, there's a lot here that they're playing with that actually is true to the story. So I think what we've heard as the described circumstances of the situation are very likely to have taken place in that order. I think we just need to see that moment for ourselves now. Because in the comic, it doesn't actually happen right off the top. It happens much further in to the run. Yeah, I would check out those comics at some point.
Yeah, definitely check those out. I started reading them. I fell hard in love with Miss Marvel. So I've been reading a ton of that. And I'm almost done that. And then I'm going to jump into Moon Knight to see what I've been missing. But definitely check that out.
For me, this scene was so frustrating because it was, like, Layla, I know that you've been bombarded with this news here, but A, you've got to get out of there. Get out of the temple and then confront him about what's bothering you. But also B, you are in the presence of something incredible. I mean, Stephen has solved one of the great mysteries of the ancient world in discovering the tomb of Alexander the Great, who is such an integral character and person in the history of Egypt that I was just like, no, focus on that. It's so cool. And it didn't get a long time to really be celebrated. But for me, being the history guy that I am, that was such a fun moment. I've never really seen that explored quite that way. And so just knowing how important Alexander the Great is in Egyptian history, that was awesome for me.
Daddy issues.
Yeah. I actually love that they, again, Marvel is finding a way to take real history and canonize it within the MCU, make it actually a part of the stories that they're telling and the world that they're building. And this is just a great example of doing that.
See, I feel like the reason I kind of feel like it very well could go the route of this additional alternate personality going full villain mode is just that, again, I find Layla so likable that to kind of move her into the anti-hero sort of realm, I just don't know if it would really, really fully work. So I think to kind of go further and to say like Harrow's not the villain of this series, Mark is the villain of this series, would be really interesting to see if they do end up going that route. But we'll have to wait and see.
I honestly think if there is a villain that is to really be taken away, it could potentially even just be Khonshu as being the bad guy of it all, right?
And if it is, do you believe? I don't believe Mark knows. Like there was that sort of like, does Mark not know? But when he asked questions about that fight that they had, like, what did you do, Steven? Like that's what kind of led to like, hey, there's somebody else potentially. But then also this part in this one where they see that other at the end, right? We'll get there, but Mark he's not aware of it. I don't think he's aware of it.
No, exactly. Yeah. If there is an alternate, they don't have to ask permission to take over the body. Ooh. If there is a third alternate.
And that's what makes the chaos that Harrow sees in him. It's not Mark that he sees in him. It's someone else. And we'll get to it. Don't worry. We're getting there, folks. We're almost there. Let's get to the ending. Let's talk about this. Mark is confronted by Harrow and his crew, and he pushes Layla to hide as they storm the room. Harrow recants his experience of waking up without Khonshu that first morning and how quiet it was. And he tells Mark he has a very important decision to make. And just like that, Mark takes out 3 men using that axe. I guess it was Alexander the Great's axe, and is shot twice by Harrow. At this point, I was like flipping out. Mark falls backwards into the water and floats into the light. Now, I'm going to keep going for this next part, so I'm going to breathe in some more breath here. That light is revealed to be coming from a flashlight held by a fictional character named Rosser. As we change the aspect ratio and go into 4:3, we see Rosser traversing the Aztec jungles with adventurer Dr. Stephen Grant, and as we see the camera slowly pan out, it's revealed that Mark and everyone else we've seen in the show are inside a psychiatric hospital. We see Donna, we see the woman who made Layla's fake IDs, we see the gold statue man who in the comics Justin would call out is named Crowley, and then we see Layla and Mark as they win a round of bingo. Mark finds himself heavily sedated in front of his doctor, Arthur Harrow, who tries to have a conversation with him. Not having it, Mark freaks out, recalling that Harrow shot him, and he runs out of the room. He hides in a room with a shaking sarcophagus, and inside he discovers Stephen, now in a separate body from his own. Stephen and Mark continue their escape and pass yet another shaking sarcophagus until they're stopped by some very loud stomping coming from beyond the doors in front of them. The doors open, and they're greeted by the hippo goddess Tarouet, who simply says, "Hi," as Mark and Steven scream in disbelief, and they kind of fall back and hold each other, and it's absolutely fantastic. So, before we discuss where we think Mark and Steven are, which we're going to save for our prediction segment, I want to know your first reactions to this moment and everything you noticed as it was starting to unravel. Mike, as our guest, why don't you go first?
I mean, from a production standpoint, I loved it. Both my wife and I literally I walked out of the room and in here and turned on my computer to record this. So like that's literally the last thing I saw before looking at my computer. And I just remembered that scene, like him floating into the light and that light turning into what I thought was going to be the moon. Like, come on, it's Moon Knight. So I was like, oh, this has got to be the moon. I'm sure that was intentional. And then it turns out to be this flashlight in what very obviously was a TV show, but I'm so gullible, turned to Kate and I'm like, this is a TV show, right? It's in 4:3 and it's like really bad and it's poorly scripted, it's poorly acted. I'm like, this is a TV show, right? And then as it pans out a little bit more, I'm proven true. I was like, okay. And then just enthralled. I didn't know what to think. I was not expecting it. I was completely thrown for a loop, but enjoying every second of it, especially right up until the hippo goddess.
Hippo lady.
Hippo lady. Yeah. Like I loved every second of it. It was very well done. I didn't even notice all those characters were characters. I recognized them. I didn't even notice them.
Yeah. Cause like you called out,
Crowley.
No, not Crowley. The woman that helped Layla get her passports. What was her name again?
Yeah. We never got a name for her.
It's her mom.
I don't think that was her.
Isn't it her mom?
We thought it was her mom.
So we thought it was, but
might not be.
Yeah, I don't think it was her because I know someone else said they thought it was her, but it definitely wasn't her.
Okay.
The one that's drawing the
because you figure she's the one. Right, she's giving identities. She's drawing fake. You know what I mean? Like she's drawing Khonshu as an identity. Sure. I don't know.
I think she's one of the people from the Swiss scenes, but I'm not sure.
The German town.
Yeah.
But there were so many different callbacks to all the different parts of the episodes. Like we saw cupcakes, we saw the Rubik's Cube, Crawley.
The painting in the office.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The painting in the office, the table. Where was the HR, the same place that he did the HR conversation? There's all these different little layers that harken back that put you in a place of, well, what did we just watch? What were the last 3, almost 4 episodes? Like, were they real? Were they not?
Well, it's just such a fun direction for the show to take. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of mystery going on into just how these personalities work and how they function together and everything like that. But I mean, we'd gotten to a point where it seemed fairly straightforward. You know, they were trying to stop Arthur Harrow. You've got these gods who are obviously in conflict with their ideals and everything like that. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the whole show just flips you over. Steven saying like, "Oh, the little meaty bits." That's me picking those up and putting my brain back together after my mind has been blown. Like this is just wild. I was just slack-jawed watching the screen as this all unfolded.
In the middle of the before we all got whacked part, there was definitely a point where I'm like, man, this is just a really fun take on, and I think I'm thinking of one of your guys' thoughts where it's a really fun take on like Marvel's Indiana Jones, except with its own spin and a little bit more.
It's Tomb Buster.
Yeah, like it's a bit of a Tomb Buster, and I'm like, really cool. And then all of a sudden, just bam, like M. Night Shyamalan, like at the beginning of the story somehow, like just crazy.
Well, it's really cool. Again, we do see a ton of those, obviously, little references. Even the scarab that Donna is holding is the one that she was trying to, one of the stuffies from the museum. Some of the things I wanted to sort of just shout out, like, I think there's 2 really subtle things that are in this sequence that really got to me. One of them being the fly. So we see a fly that flies onto Mark's hand or something like that as he's sort of coming to the moment it sort of lands on him, he hits that realization. And it harkens back to a line from episode 2 where I believe Mark Spector says to Stephen Grant as he's in the mirror, most of the time it will take all your willpower just to be a fly on the wall. And I love that they were able to still pull in some of these really subtle things. There's a moment when Mark is running away from Harrow, and Harrow says, you have to take inventory of your feelings, which calls back to Stephen every time he was he was being punished for his tardiness at the museum.
He had to take inventory.
He had to do inventory duty, right? So it's just these little things that are so cool in how they built it out all the way from the beginning. And obviously they knew what they were doing. But they've been giving us hints from the beginning. The little girl that Stephen meets in the museum, who comes up to him, like one of the first characters he interacts with, and she said, and did that suck for you? Not being able to pass through the field of reeds. And he's like, well, for that, I'd have to be dead. And it's just this really like weird line that you can totally overlook and not think about for 4 episodes, and then you get to this moment and you're like, they've been doing it since the beginning. There's a moment, just one more thing I want to call out, where we see Donna asking him to pick up a box of plush Tarawet hippos, and he literally calls out the goddess by name in that moment. And so it's just like they've just found a way to sneak all this stuff in to the point where I was just like, I want to go back and rewatch it with this lens, and getting to do this watch club and really like focus in on these things. It's so cool to see some of these little things that you're like, they put
seeds.
This stuff right in front of us the entire time.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that leading up to that's what makes this payoff feel so good too, is to think back to those little moments to understand how it was all hinting at this inevitable sort of flip in the script.
Do you think this is reality now and everything was a dream, quote unquote?
I mean, that's definitely, one of the tricky things. I think we'll quickly touch upon that in our predictions overall as to what we think this is, where this is, what's happening, where is this going. One thing I wanted to focus on, though, just before we do that, is the shaky tomb, the shaky sarcophagus that we didn't open, that Kevin kind of called out right at the beginning of the episode here. Justin, I'm going to throw it to you. Obviously, our resident, Darcy's not here tonight, and you're the only one of us that have read the Moon Knight run. Who do you think this is? And do you think we're going to get to see them in the next couple episodes?
Well, I think the internet feels like it's definitely Jake Lockley, the third persona of Moon Knight. He is known to have these 3 identities, and we haven't been introduced to him. And I think people were kind of, taken back at the fact that they were only doing 2 and not 3, but they thought, oh, he's probably hidden in there. And I think, we've had 3 separate incidences across the last 4 episodes. Mike, you pointed it out, the date. Who's going to make that date? It's not going to be Mark. It's not going to be Steven.
He's married. Yeah, Steven's too afraid. Yeah. Boom.
There's your first instance. The second one was obviously when they were at the cliffs in Egypt, and they were, who killed all these people? They don't know. So someone is clearly able to take over without having to necessarily ask for permission. So that's kind of clear. And then getting to this point in this episode to see that tomb shaking and them not to go address it, that was kind of the final confirmation that there's another personality that's afoot here. What that is, I don't know, but I have a feeling it would have to be Jake Lockley. But they're having liberties with these characters. Like in the comics, Stephen Grant is this rich billionaire Bruce Wayne type. Here, he's a bumbling, unconfident individual who is, he's a basic geek. Mark Spector is definitely a mercenary, both through and through the comics and here. So, and Jake Lockley was a cabbie, was a British cabbie, right? So could, if you're bringing in the British into Stephen Grant, what is Jake Lockley's character going to look like? If, are you going to have 2 British personas? I don't think so. I think the persona might be a bit different, and because he seems to, we'll see, because he'll be, give the Emmy to Oscar Isaac for when it comes around for this show, because seriously, if he's acting 3 characters, he deserves it.
Well, and this is where it really brings up the idea to me, I think, that Marvel loves to take the comics and then make these small adjustments, and I think a small adjustment to Jake Lockley's character could be to push him to be even more dark, even more of sort of that evil character. So again, that's kind of where I'm coming out with that one.
I believe that this is definitely, there's a third character coming for sure. This morning on my way to work, I read 1 episode, and it's actually the 2014 run. Its writing's okay, but there was a part that they mentioned Khonshu having 4 different sort of personality traits, and they mentioned 2 that I'm like, oh well, that's definitely a Steven type, and that's definitely a Mark type, and I'm like, I don't know these other 2, and then somebody had mentioned, was it Jacob something that you just said?
Yeah,
and somebody mentioned that name, and I'm like, oh, it's another one. And so they had also talked about Moon Knight having ripped off someone's face, and I was like, okay, that's really out of character. So all of that kind of coming together, and then watching this episode, I'm like, oh, there's a third one, and like I have a feeling he's like he's way left field from the other two.
Yeah. I mean, he's the only character that we've seen spill a ton of blood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Besides Mark right at the end there. And you could almost even argue that in those slight moments, we could have seen
at the
Jake
first episode
in that very moment, right?
Imagine in that first episode.
Yeah.
In the first episode when he kills all those people in the middle of the street in that Swiss town.
We don't know that was Mark.
Exactly.
We don't know that was Mark at all.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think even in the moment where he's right, where he's holding the axe and he's chopping that guy and he throws it into the chest of the other guy, again, that could have been Jake in that moment clicking in. Because as you said, Justin, I don't think in this plane of existence that he needs permission to come in. No. But let's get to our speculation and talk about where we think, what's going on here. Where are they? This is our prediction segment for this Watch Club, which we get to do for the first time, which I'm super stoked about, which we're going to be calling What the Pharaoh is Going On. So that's the best I got. Listen, I love it. I'm not on that much sleep tonight. What the Pharaoh is Going On. I want to know, what do you think is really happening? I think for this, who wants to kick us off here? Who wants to tell us your deep thoughts?
Go.
Mike, do you have any theories on what's going on here?
Oh man. So I'm not a big fan of the writing "it was all a dream" thing. Like, that really bums me out when that gets to that, and I'm sure most people
100%.
agree with that. So I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping this is maybe one of the personalities is contained, all of them in one spot somehow. That's my goal. Or my dream. Sorry, not my goal, but if I was writing it might be my goal. But that would be my dream, to be like I'm just making this
What personalities have you enslaved, Mike?
Yeah.
What other personalities are hiding behind you right now? No,
I wish they were the writers. But that's what I hope. Like, I really hope that it's not all a dream. As far as like where it's going, like, I'd love to see it be almost an internal struggle. Like, Arthur Harrow's a great villain, and he's really great, but I can't see him being the massive battle at the end of the series. There's going to be some sort of massive struggle, whether it be big and showy. I feel like Marvel's kind of steered away from that a little bit now and then. It's about 50-50. So I think we're going to see a really big struggle at the end. And I don't think it's going to be Arthur Harrow. I think it's going to be Moon Knight himself against himself.
That'd be cool.
And that's my prediction. My biggest thing I can't wait to see is the impact of this in the greater MCU. Obviously that'll be more near the end of your Watch Club, probably, where that kind of goes. I think this could have been a movie, though. I really feel like it's big enough and the character's good enough, and maybe Marvel didn't want to take the risk. But personally, I'm watching and looking and enjoying the music, the backdrop, the characters, the script. Everything is really, really high quality in this, and I think that this could have been a movie.
I just wonder if, especially with how episode 4 ends here, and they have so much more story to tell in just 2 more episodes. I'm not sure there's enough time in a movie to tell the story they're telling here. They need that extra 2 hours that a 6-episode or a 6-episode television show sort of allows them to take on.
That's fair.
Yeah, you can spend more time with the characters in the story. I think if you can look at the productions that you're doing as still the same investment for a movie versus a TV show, that they're the same investment, but you're just elongating the story. I think that's a win-win for everyone. Like something like The Eternals should have been a series, right? Because it probably would have sat better with audiences. And I feel like to take what they're trying to do here and condense it in a movie, it would have to be 2 movies or maybe 3. Who knows? Really.
I mean, I feel like even with Stephen Grant, we wouldn't have gotten as much time with Stephen Grant, and especially if they have to kind of push the audiences to say, like, it's not the Stephen Grant you were looking for, we're sorry, but we think you'll like this version too. I think they needed the time to really flesh that out. But Justin, you were gabbing all over my ears off air, and I was like, save it for the podcast.
Well, because we called it out. I've been reading the Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood comic run from 2016, and I was very surprised in the very first issue that this is where we find our character is in this place, is in a sane asylum, and it's used in the comics. It's used as a place where all spiritual beings can be, and it's called the Overvoid. It's been referenced. It was referenced in last week's episode as sort of being like the home of the gods, and how they're able to transport themselves from their spiritual to the earth through their avatars and so on. So I believe that this is where we are finding Mark. He is stuck here. This is a manifestation of his mind that has created it, that I think either is something of his past, like he's been in a mental institution, or because he was given that pamphlet earlier, he believes that he needs to be in that sort of facility. That's why he's created this sort of place. And there's subtle hints in the last 10 minutes here that really do imply that this is a dream. Because I'm with you, Mike. I don't think that this has been all a dream. It's definitely getting weird. But that does that Inception moment, where it kind of slants, and as we know from that sort of Inception, that's usually when the brain is sort of aware of the confines of the dream, so it starts to shift, and he snaps himself out of it. And also the fact that he was able to confront Stephen Grant finally physically, like he hugged him, he embraced him,
exactly,
right? So this is obviously a place where these two entities can live together rather than live in one, and that feels very spiritual. And obviously, given the fact that we see the lovely hippo god at the end there, I think that's kind of going to be the guide that's going to help them get back to the other side here. And I don't know, 5 and 6 are going to be really interesting, but I feel like episode 5, the penultimate, is going to be very much like WandaVision's penultimate, where we're going to get a lot of answers. We're going to get a lot of answers that are going to help set up and then really punt us off into episode 6 in the finale.
Yeah, speaking of Taweret, a lot of thirst tweets. A lot of thirst tweets going around I've been seeing for this hippo lady. I mean, I've been seeing memes of Lola Bunny. Right, I've been seeing memes of Lola Bunny, and then the new version is Taweret.
There's a very charismatic, high. Like I was very wow, okay,
she's very charming.
I gotta see more of this.
But she is she's known as a sort of a protector. She is a guide. She's also known as a nurse as well within Egyptology. So I could totally see that playing into the idea that maybe she is the one that does sort of help them through this next step or this next part of their journey away from whatever's going on with Harrow.
Well, and even maybe away from Khonshu and his control. If she's, she sort of represents rebirth. And so if they're able to sort of come out of this and free themselves of his control and find their own power somehow, I could see her being the guide for that as well.
I don't know, like Kev, you said you're a big history buff, so I'm not too sure where this might fit into that. But one thing Kate and I were wondering, especially Kate, when they were zooming out and you saw them take Khonshu's little statue, I forget what they called it, put it on the little shelf, and they were zooming out, and you saw maybe about 10 others or something like that. She was expecting it to pan, continue to pan, and you'd see hundreds, if not thousands of them. And I was like, that would be, this is happening for a really long time. So like, how long has this been going on? And after what you just said, Nate, is this actually something that they can replace? Like, can the moon god be replaced by someone else? Like, can Khonshu come back and have a different personality? Can it have something different happening? Like where can that go? Or is Khonshu just going to come back and be a cranky old bastard?
I love how you're thinking, Mike, because you're kind of playing into a little bit of what I had written down in terms of my thoughts on where this is and what this is. Kind of a combination of a lot of that, in the sense that the Ashabti, is that I think what it's called. Right. Maybe that's where Mark is right now, inside one of those statues, and that's where all of them are. And yes, it is this overvoid, the world between worlds, and I feel like in an interesting, I could see them going with an interesting take here, where they actually reveal to us that Stephen, Mark, Jake, and Khonshu are all Khonshu. He isn't an avatar. He's not an avatar. Moon Knight is Khonshu, and that could be a huge change up for them to kind of say, like, okay, yeah, maybe he got his powers from the original Khonshu, but in bestowing his powers to him, he became Khonshu. And I'm just wondering if that could be a place where they're taking it. And Khonshu, gods we're seeing obviously with the Thor trailer and getting to see gods in Eternals struggling with the struggles of man, to see a god like Khonshu suffering from multiple identity disorder, which is a very obviously a human thing. I could see that really freaking the gods out and then forcing him into this situation or this place where he has to work his way through that as a god. I don't know. I that's something about that sort of really worked for me as a theory. And I feel like it would really solidify the Moon Knight character by the end of this series as well, to just say like he is the Moon Knight, like, or the god. I don't know.
Well, they're not going to. Marvel's never going to say something bad or sort of put down the idea of dissociative identity disorder, I think it is, right? DID.
Yes,
they're
correct,
definitely not going to put that down for any reason. Like, they're going to definitely say that, like, that's not a sickness, that's not a bad thing. It's something that people need to work through, and I think and can get help for, and they can get away from that. So there's definitely going to be some sort of struggle like that, and I can't imagine that Moon Knight and all the personalities and Khonshu are all going to come out on top somehow.
Totally, but I do feel like to that point, how much better to villainize the gods in general that we've been looking at, the Ennead in general, than to say that they see this disorder as, oh yeah, the puny human thing that you're suffering from because maybe you've spent too much time with Hathor and she's too loving and there's this whole backstory that we got from that whole Ennead thing, and I'm just wondering if that plays into it somehow.
I could see that.
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sure. No, for sure. I think that's. I think you're right though to say, Nate, that it'll definitely come around just affirming who Moon Knight is, and even with 3 identities and Khonshu's powers, like how that's all going to pan out. Because it's really interesting in the Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood run that how they perceive Khonshu and very much how Khonshu is something that Mark has to seek out. For reasons, without spoiling it, because I know, Nate, you're going to read it, but he has to seek him out. So it's interesting how they can do it. So they have so much that they can pull from to really help tell this story the best way they can.
Interesting.
Exciting.
Cool. Do we have anything else before we want to get to our overall thoughts and final score?
I just wanted to call out the score of the whole up to these 4 episodes. Since you said the word score, it reminded me. I'm overwhelmed with how amazing it is, and I can't wait to have that as a playlist to listen to while I read that run of Moon Knight. Like Kate called it out. She's like, "Oh, I love the music," and I was like, "Yeah, overall, like it's some sort of Egyptian hip hop infusion. Like I just loving it. It's just been really, really cool and a nice fresh take for the Marvel universe.
It helps to encapsulate the culture that is present in Egypt as of now.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't try to push it back to its historic. It embraces some of those sounds, but it also shows the future of what those sounds and that music looks like. So I think it's such a great way whenever you can infuse like culturally relevant music to help.
Black Panther.
Exactly. Like like it has a breadth to it that feels separate from the story, but helps just accent it so well at the same time.
Yeah. Shout out to series musician Hesham Nazi, who did the music.
Love it.
So definitely. We'll be seeing that probably released as soon as the episode, or as soon as the show wraps. I'm sure we'll see a nice big soundtrack, and there'll be the vinyls that we'll have to all buy and all that stuff, and not just pop vinyls. But let's get to our overall thoughts and final score, which I think for this episode we're going to be giving our scale on a rating on a scale of 1 to 5 Moon Knight action figures. Which, do I want an exact replica of that little grubby action figure that he holds? 100%. Did I learn somewhere on the internet that's actually a repainted Skeletor action figure? So I'll have to find one on Etsy maybe. I don't know if Marvel would be able to release something like that.
Just paint it yourself.
Yeah, maybe I'll just paint it myself, or I'll pay someone to paint it. I'm lazy, but
there are Moon Knight figurines. Why would they go
sure.
that
route? I want that one. I want the Skeletor one. But Mike, as our guest, I'm going to get you to go first. I want you to give your overall thoughts for this episode and your rating on a scale of 1 to 5 Moon Knight action figures.
I purposefully didn't choose a rating going into this. Not that I had a lot of time, but I was like, first I was like, they're going to ask me a score, and I don't really know. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to listen to all your thoughts, because I feel like there's been a few times I've heard Nate go, "Oh, I'm changing my mind," and a few people say, people change their mind. So I'm definitely so excited that it went the way that it did this episode, and I can't wait to see where next episode goes. So I think I have to give it a 5 out of 5 Moon Knight action figures. I thought you were going meaty bits. I was waiting for meaty bits, but I didn't.
Oh, meaty bits!
But I was like, action figures. That's pretty good too.
Oh man, missed opportunity. I love
missed opportunity.
Okay,
Wow.
we're changing it. Justin, how many meaty bits are you giving? How many meaty bits are you going to give this episode?
Yeah, like I love this episode because it really does continue the adventures of last week, giving us some of the best Mummy Indiana Jones vibes as of yet. It delves deeper into the Egyptian myths and, with puzzles and tombs and the living dead mummies hiding in the dark. It's great. It blends the adventure with the horror masterfully, and it continues to serve up answers to questions while leaving mystery around other things to be explored further. And of course, as we've talked about, the last 10 minutes sets up what will be the biggest mystery of the rest of the season. And Kevin, you pointed it out, this series started so conventional in its Marvel style. The hunt for the MacGuffin, the pending doom, mysterious threats, all turned upside down with the introduction of the question, did it all really happen? And, I just feel like Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood Comic Run has such an influence here in this series, and you really do see it. You saw it early on. I can now have read it, and thinking back to the episodes, you could see what they were pulling, and it's just a different way of telling this story, and it's going to serve a different purpose. And as I mentioned, the Overvoid, it's so cool that they're incorporating that in here. They're showing a sort of transient place where spirits will be, and again, the next 2 episodes are going to really be interesting. I think we're going to get a lot of answers, and Mark, I think we're going to find out how Khonshu and Mark came to be. So I'm excited, and this episode definitely did that for me. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 Moon Knight action figures.
All right. You don't think? Oh, wow. So you think it could go up from here? You're hopeful on that?
Well, I'll preface this. We always say this when we give these ratings. At a certain point, when we get down towards the end, this episode could be a 5 out of 5.
True. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fair.
I hear you.
Again, I think that if this is a setup, how does it end, and how do we get to that conclusion if we're kicking it off this way?
I fully rated for potential. I can admit that. Like, there's a definitely. I'd probably a 4.5, and I gave it a half point just for potential, just because.
You trust them.
Yeah, I trust them. I'm just like I've jumped off that ledge and just been
exactly.
Marvel, you got me.
Kevin, how about yourself? How many meaty bits are you gonna? And how do you want the steak done? By the way.
Oh God.
Well done?
Oh no, never well done. If you cook your steak well done, you don't like steak, order something else off the menu. I think looking at this episode, if you even just take away the last 10 minutes, I had so much fun with this episode. It was such a great sort of pinnacle to the adventure we'd gone on with these characters over these first 4 episodes, and it really did plunge into that adventure epic aspect, and I was just loving every bit of it. And so that already would have earned probably my highest score that I've given an episode so far. And then all of a sudden that 35-minute mark hits, and it's just bonkers to the finish line. I will say, just like Justin's score might improve based on where the show might go, my score here could drastically plummet if it does turn out that everything we've watched over these first 4 episodes was a fabrication, was a creation, and it did take place in somebody's head. But I really do think it's the other way around, and I do think that when we get some answers here, it's going to be a lot more satisfying than that. I have a lot of high hopes for how they're going to sort of explain what takes place in the last few minutes of this episode. And just that excitement and anticipation. I mean, it's not just that we've been waiting a month. It'll be 5 weeks by the time we get to episode 5 next week that we've been going, what the hell is going on? And so, it's so great that the show's created this for us, and it's totally not the show's fault that we've had to suffer in agony and waiting for all this time. This is one of my favorite episodes of a Marvel TV show to date, just because I don't think there's been really a twist or a WTF moment quite like this, even in WandaVision. I think this surpasses some of those moments for me, and so I'll do it. I rarely give out the perfect score, but I was just so blown away and just so excited by everything. I'm going 5 out of 5 meaty bits covering a Moon Knight action figure.
Oh wow!
Oh
wow!
Man.
You know what? That would be if I screw up the paint job. Right, and I just get some meaty bits all over it.
As a longtime listener, I got to throw. I don't think I've heard Kevin give a 5 out of 5. Like I may have missed one,
maybe one or two.
Very rare.
I don't think I've heard those episodes, whatever they were, because I definitely was wowed when you just said like I rarely do it. I'm like, is he gonna do it? Is he gonna do it? And I just it's
there's a secret Eternals episode where he gave it a 5 and then changed his mind.
Yeah,
no, I'm just
right.
kidding. Yeah. But for me, this episode had, everything that I want, not only as a Marvel, Disney Plus show fan, but a Moon Knight, starting to dip into the comics fan in general. So I love this episode. I love how visibly it starts off so grandiose, and then kind of like the episode itself, it gets deeper and deeper and darker as we sort of dive into this tomb and almost sort of dive into the depths of hell or wherever this eventual void place is. And I just, again, the Mummy vibes, right? The Indiana Jones vibes. I'm such a sucker for meta stuff. The moment they sort of start making fun of themselves or sort of started saying like, yeah, this feels like Indiana Jones, right? Well, here's Tomb Buster, which is Indiana Jones. Like they're just putting it right in front of us. And I love when they put in all these little tiny details that we can go back to later and see again with these new eyes. And it just reminds me of how when I used to study Lost. Like Lost would come out, and every week I would just sort of sit there and study the show over and over and over again. And we weren't even doing it. I dream of the multiverse where we did a watch club for Lost. Maybe one day when we have a ton of time on our hands,
I'll do that one.
We can do that,
right? I'm a huge fan.
Let's go. But listen, they are on a tightrope with this episode, like you guys said. So it'll be really interesting to see if they can jump off and stick the landing. But even if this is the best episode in the series, I think I'll still be happy with the way that even just this one went. So yeah, I'm giving this episode 5 out of 5 Moon Knight action figures covered in meaty bits. But that is it. Before we make like a mummy and wrap things up, Mike, did you have anything you wanted to plug for our listeners so they can hear more of your lovely self?
Yeah, I do a podcast actually with a friend of mine, Justin Baloney Jones McDonald, called Dumpster Talk. We started back in
Baloney Jones.
Yeah, it's a dumb nickname. But we started that back in 2018. It's had its trials and tribulations through everything, and then COVID kind of gave it a big hit. But we released another episode where we're going to take it back on the road, I guess, and try to just excel at it a little bit further. I doubt it'll be ever as professional as this podcast, and it's definitely a lot more explicit than this podcast. But it's something that I can't wait to start bringing in guests and have people join us to just have some fun, shoot the shit. Yeah. Just we have no plans, and it is called Dumpster Talk for a reason. So yeah.
That's cool. That's cool.
You'll find it on all the platforms.
We're open to explicit, so
yeah. We'll maybe we'll make a Geekcentric appearance after dark on the Dumpster Talk podcast, and maybe my parents won't listen to that episode. But I not that they listen to these episodes, but I want to just quickly shout out dude, sure. as somebody who has a Dumpster Talk t-shirt, I'm a huge fan of the Dumpster Talk podcast, big fan of Baloney Jones himself. His hot dog Instagram is absolutely legendary. If you're a fan of just terrible looking but somehow delicious at the same time looking hot dogs, you gotta check out that Instagram. We'll have all the links for the podcast for Dumpster Talk in our description, so please please check them out. Give them some support, because honestly, if you just like sitting, kind of near the barbecue, maybe somewhere in Muskoka by the lake with a good buddy of yours over some beers, that's what this podcast is, and it's absolutely fantastic. And I can't wait to get to be on an episode at some point in the future.
Thanks, man.
So Mike, listen, you did such a good job. We had another wonderful guest. Jo Knows Photos was originally planned to be on the podcast. We're going to get her in for probably our Miss Marvel Watch Club at some point. But Mike kind of stepped in here last minute, which we're super grateful for, and thank you so much for doing that. And because of that, Mike, you did such a good job. I think you should come back next week. Do you want to come back next week on the podcast?
I'd more than love to.
Penultimate, baby. Penultimate.
I would never say no to a penultimate podcast. Like, that is just like, yeah. That might have been the only reason I said no to this one. If Nate was like, we want you to do this one instead. I might be like, you know what? No, I can't. I'm busy. I'm busy watching Moon Knight right now.
Yeah. So we'll definitely have you on for that. That is it for this week's episode of Watch Club. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts, if you haven't already. And if you want to write into the show with your thoughts or predictions, what the pharaoh you think is going on, listen, you can just reach us by writing in to my own personal deity, Justin, the Egyptian Jackal. Listen, Justin, can you let them know how they can reach us? And I'm sending control right over to you right now. Just look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Yeah, there you go.
Why, thank you, Avatar. They can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com, or on Twitter at geekcentricyt, or on Instagram at wearegeekcentric.
I don't know if I like the idea that you're the god and I'm the avatar in this situation, but that's fine. Listen, we'll figure it out. We'll make it work. Also, keep in mind, we've got a ton of other episodes covering the latest and greatest shows and movies out now, including our recent spoiler-free reviews for Everything Everywhere All at Once and The Northman. We also have a wonderful interview that Justin had the opportunity to do with the Daniels, the directors of Everything Everywhere All at Once, which, by the way, if you haven't watched Everything Everywhere All at Once,
what are you doing?
Yet,
Mike,
please.
Have you seen it? Mike, have you seen it?
I haven't. And I really need to do it. I really need to do it. I see that episode keeps showing up in my feed, and I'm like, I gotta watch that.
Gotta watch the movie. Coming soon, we're also going to be sharing our review for Ozark Season 4 Part 2. So we're very excited to see how the birds wrap up that storyline, and we're going to
bird is the word.
We're going to be talking about it for sure very soon. So definitely, subscribe. Plus, we also have our weekly This Week in Geek episodes where we break down the latest trailers and news every single Wednesday. With the latest episode that went up, I guess, just this past Wednesday, where we actually shared our thoughts for the trailer for Thor, Love and Thunder. Really quickly, high-level thoughts. Mike, did you check out the trailer for Thor, Love and Thunder?
Really, really quickly, is it weird that the only thing that comes to mind is Natalie Portman's biceps? Okay, that part was amazing. Sorry, spoilers.
It's
the world
incredible.
building looks amazing. The quick flash of who I'm assuming is Zeus. Seeing the Guardians in there, and the best thing that I could ever ask for a summertime blockbuster hit is Taika Waititi meets James Gunn, and just in a huge love fest in another planet. Like, that is just amazing to me to get that as a blockbuster. So I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, listen, Mike, Justin, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me for this Watch Club. And as we say,
Laters, Gators.